I tell you that we're incredibly excited as an organization about the opportunity to improve our team in this draft. We'll be doing so with a really heavy heart. We lost a member of our family this weekend in Reggie Cobb, and it's tough. And I think a lot of you had an opportunity. What I'm finding is not only did Reggie have an impact on this building, the outpouring from the league has just been unbelievable. The scouts, the coaches, GMs, he touched the NFL community, and I think far beyond that. And we're finding out more and more each minute with the correspondence we're having with people. And I think a lot of people who just really cared about him, and that's because he had a special way of making people feel really good about themselves. And, I think we'll always remember the infectious smile, the laugh, and just the person that Reggie was. He was a teammate of mine in 1993, a real special person, and did a lot for this organization. So we're going to try to honor him. I know we're keeping his seat empty this whole weekend. I just talked with his son. I think he's going to be a part of a really cool way to try to honor Reggie Cobb. And having said that, we've got a job to do, and I know you guys have a job to do. So I'll open it up for questions with respect to the draft.
Along those lines,
Yeah.
have you been able to, as best you can, try to move forward without Reggie here?
Well, I mean, it's really fresh, Matt. It is really fresh for us all today. We gathered all the scouts and sat in this room, and obviously a lot of them had gone home for the Easter weekend. We allowed them to go home and then come back, and this happened while they were gone, so it was fresh and new, and it hurt. We went around today, and everybody just kind of told their favorite Reggie Cobb story, and I think it was cathartic. It was. But it is still very fresh, and so we, as I don't just, those aren't just words that we'll move forward with a heavy heart. Reggie's imprint will be on this draft. He worked incredibly hard, as he always did, in the preparation for it, and I'd love nothing more to be able to take a player that he scouted hard, and we have enough cross checks and all that he'll have his imprint on this draft in some form or fashion. And certainly, by the way, it was just he just had a spirit about him that was something special.
Johnny, how would you gauge just the interest in quarterbacks in this draft, and how that might obviously factor in what you guys might want to do at number 2 with somebody wanting to move up for one?
Yeah, we've been hearing a lot about it. It's interesting when you're in position that you really aren't looking at that position. We haven't spent a ton of time on that position, but we've been hearing a lot about what people think about it. We obviously have them evaluated because we do spend, although we don't focus a lot of our time. We have studied the group, and there seems to be one guy who's getting a lot of buzz, and I know about as much as you guys do in terms of what's going to happen. I can tell you though that we'll be prepared. I don't like picking at number 2, but I like picking at number 2, if that makes any sense. I hope we're never here again, because it means we didn't play well enough, not nearly well enough, but it is a great opportunity. And whatever happens at 1, we have a group of players that we've vetted thoroughly, and we'll be prepared, and I think we'll get a really good difference-making player.
Do you get a sense right at this point that if that first pick falls a certain way, whether there will be action during that 10-minute span of giving you guys the opportunity to move back?
Yeah, I think by nature of having the number 2 pick and the type of player, and in this year's draft, there's some really good players up there. I would imagine there'll be some interest. We'll certainly listen, but we'll also be prepared to pull the trigger, because I think we have, we've got some high grades on a number of players that we really feel could help this help our franchise get where we want to get in the immediate future and further on into the future.
With the talent that's available up there and the number of teams that might want to communicate in that 10-minute span,
Sure.
How do you plan out the workflow?
Yeah.
In that, let's say that a scenario goes where there's so much interest that there's 3 or 4 suitors.
Yeah.
How do you plan out that time for that 10 minutes to
Yeah.
field all of those?
Well, my experience is I think there's due diligence that goes on prior to the draft, where you start to have conversations, hey, in the event that this happens, some of that has started. I think one thing that I've learned in my short time here, we're well equipped. We've got a number of people in here who are equipped to handle that, and I think it's something that we're prepared for, and we can move quickly. And you know, like I said, we'll listen, but we'll also be prepared if we like someone there enough that if we don't get something incredibly special, we'll just sit there right there and take a player we think can really impact us in a positive way.
John, how many top echelon talents do you think there are in this draft?
You know, when you say top echelon, I think there's some that have separated themselves from the pack, from the pack, and you know, the way we're seeing it might be different than somebody else is seeing it, who may have a quarterback in mind. But you know, I think there's a group of players that have separated themselves in our mind, and those are the type of players we're looking there. We're also prepared that if something came, you know, to us that was too good to be true, you know, players that we've graded the entire draft, but players that we would be comfortable taking at, you know, in the middle of the round at 10 or wherever. You know, we've done our due diligence there as well, Tim.
How many players have separated themselves?
That's a good question. And I think one that we'll keep in-house, but I think there are a group of them that we feel very good about in terms of being impact players in this league.
You only have 6 draft picks this year. Is that enough to fill your needs, or ideally would you like to pick up 1 or 2 more?
You know, we're used to having more, Grant, and so it's uncomfortable just by virtue of that, you know, what we're accustomed to. I think one thing, as I look at it, you know, like the 5th rounder that we don't have, that's Laken Tomlinson, and I think Laken Tomlinson be a really good 5th round pick, and we're thrilled with what he has become. So you kind of have to look at it like that. Draft choices are valuable, so you know, it's just, you know, a lot happens as the draft's moving. It's fluid, and if we don't have more than that, we just gotta make them all count. And in any event, we have to make them all count. But you know, there certainly would be a scenario where we try to add to it. I think just like.
I'm asking you to put on a smoke screen or take away a smoke screen, but
Yeah.
you still have a need probably for another pass rusher. Pass rushing is always great to have. Nick Bosa could be there
Yeah.
at 2. Is there a way he's not a slam dunk candidate for you if he's there at 2?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, with another pass rusher, I think, you know, the one thing that's attractive to us, we got here a couple of years ago, and the roster was what it was. But I think a chance to be special, to have a group that has an opportunity, and that's all you know going in, an opportunity to be dominant at something instead of just, yeah, we're pretty good here, an opportunity to be dominant. And I think we're getting close to having that opportunity. Whether that happens, that's up to the guys and to our, you know, we got to go make that happen. But we feel really good about like what D Ford has added to us, and we do feel that if we can add more pieces, we're going to have that chance. And I think we might need it. You know, when you look at our division, you know, when you look at Russell, and he's going to be a part of Seattle long term, and some other things that could happen, you better be able to rush the passer. And so that's something that we're mindful of, that we're excited about the prospect of. And you know, specific to Nick Bosa, Nick's a heck of a player. He's one we've really enjoyed studying throughout this process. And you know, the same goes for Quinnen Williams and Josh Allen and you know, Montez Sweat, and I could go on and on. It's a very deep class at defensive line, and that's exciting not only for us, but I think for a lot of the league, because that's something you just have to have in this league, the ability to get after and knock down the quarterback.
His social media has gotten a lot of scrutiny. Have you guys given it the same amount of scrutiny, and what's your take on that generally and specific to him?
Well, I think just in general, I would tell you that we look at everything. I think this is we try to be as thorough in the process as we can. That is something we look at, but we also look at, you know, what kind of teammate is he? What do his teammates think about him? And when I say him, I'm speaking of any prospect. And so In particular, when you're talking about guys who are going to go that high, you vetted these guys in every way, and you try to look at things like that. What kind of member of your organization would this guy be in every respect? And so you look at it all, and we've done that with all the prospects that we might be considering at that spot.
Is that something that you and Adam would have done when you went to Columbus, is to talk to teammates about guys that perhaps you could?
Yeah, throughout the process. I mean, you do that when you have your 60 interviews at the Combine. When you go to the pro day at Columbus, you talk to coaches. And not only about that player, but about other players that they have. They got a number of great players there at Ohio State, and so in the process, we've had the opportunity to talk to a number of them, coaches that we know extremely well. So for him and for any prospect, you do that.
With him specifically, what did it turn out? Would you foresee any issues?
I think that he's a great teammate, and I'm not going to get too far, because a lot can happen at one. He could go one, and so I think getting specific in this meeting to specific players, but I think in general, we spend a lot of time vetting these guys and everything about them, and you put something into all of it.
Speaking of vet,
In regard-
go ahead.
Go ahead,
In
Eric.
regards to players and potential off-the-field stuff, I think, in my mind, there are maybe two guys that you've drafted who had, maybe those question marks, Ruben and Joe Williams. Neither one of those guys, worked out. Are there lessons learned from those draft picks, or is it like, you have to take risks, and those two guys just didn't happen to work out?
I think a combination of both. If you aren't always learning, shame on you, shame on us. And so, I think with Ruben, I think we somewhat accounted for it by where we drafted him. I think we had him at a certain value. We didn't draft him there. That doesn't excuse us. It's a shame. We're very happy to have Quan Alexander, but that came at a heavy price, and that we would have much preferred to have Ruben still playing here. So of course you learn a lesson, and if you don't, like I said, shame on you. So you work hard to try to identify what is the lesson that you learned, and we know in-house what those lessons are. And as to Joe, I think that was a pick. It didn't work out, but in every scenario, whether something worked or didn't work, you take note, and we try to do that in each individual case.
Don, with Ruben in specific, have you made any adjustments to the way you research players, or this red flag is going to cost more on our board than
Yeah.
at that time?
I think you're always doing that, Tim, and there's certain tweaks we've made. Our 30 visits this year, we brought people more in a group setting. We want to see how they interact with other people, and so those are subtle things that we do. But there's so much that goes on into the research of these players, and you learn something every year. And I think the most important thing you impart upon your scouts, upon your staff, is like we have to be as thorough as humanly possible. As anything we can learn about these guys is valuable information, and I'm real proud of the work we've done with our staff to get as much information to be able to be equipped to make good decisions as possible.
Do you think there were 14 receivers? Is that right?
Geez, I don't know if that was the number. We had a 30 visit where we brought in a lot, but I don't know what the exact number was.
What does it say about that you're looking at so many different wide receivers? What are you generally looking for?
Well, I think it says that there's a lot of depth at that position. There's a lot of guys who we like, and there's different reasons we bring guys in. That just like any position, that may be a spot where we try to improve our team. Fortunately, in this year's draft, it seems to be a good stable of guys who can help.
Considering how many first-round picks you have on the interior of your defensive line, why is Quentin Williams someone you would consider drafting in the second pick?
Just because he's an excellent football player. I mean, the season he had may have been as good a college football season I've ever seen. I mean, it was just dominant, and to think that was his first year playing nose tackle. I mean, it's a great story. He goes into Nick Saban, and basically says, I want to play nose for you. He never played in there. And, Nick kind of goes on to tell him, what he would have to do to make that happen. It was gaining a lot of weight, doing so in a good fashion, and the kid did, and gosh, he what a season he had. So he's a spectacular player. And so, when you look at how your roster's currently comprised, when you have a opportunity to get a talent like that, you certainly look at every avenue to improve your team.
Can he play nose tackle in the NFL, or is he more of a 3 technique?
He can play anything. That guy, he's special. Yeah.
How many first-round grades did you end up giving out this year?
I did that last year. That seemed to make a lot of. I'm not going to get into the specific numbers. I'll tell you that we have 184 gradable or draftable players on our board. That's actually a little less than last year, but I think more indicative of. I think it's be harder to make this team. We feel like we've gradually improved our roster. It's going to be tougher for draft picks to make our team, and so we wanted that reflected in the way we were grading draftable players. And it's not by much, but we ended up with 184 draftable players, and that's where we're at.
What was your reaction to find out that the Raiders sent home their scouting department, I guess, last week, and how much effort do you put into containing information and making sure
Well,
things aren't getting out?
I think at first I didn't. Someone said, "Hey, did you hear?" I think my dad said, "Did you hear the Raiders sent their scouting staff home?" And I said, "So did we. It's Easter weekend." And I think the second part was they aren't coming back, But ours are coming back. I can only speak for us, and I'm happy to have the guys around here. We rely on these guys a lot. But as to, I think you always have to be mindful of keeping information in-house. But you also, I really am a big believer, you better have great faith in the people that are working for you and their ability to keep things in-house. And if they can't, that's a problem.
How many people within the organization might know what the plan is at 2, or what the 1A, 1B, 1C plan?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot have done. We finished our meetings here, not last week, but the week prior, and so they're involved in a lot of discussions. I think Kyle and I are always mindful of never completely tipping our hand, more so just listening to information, asking questions. But sometimes they pick up on guys that we're interested in. Of course they do, but you have to be able to trust the people that are working for you. And I won't speak for another organization on what they're doing and why they're doing it.
John, being that you guys are considering an interior pass rusher, what does that say about Solomon Thomas or Eric Armstead? You guys have been very patient with over the last 2 seasons. Where would that put them if you guys do address?
Well, we're excited about both those guys. We're not making a big change to our system, but we did go out and bring in Chris Kasarik to work along with Chris Kiffin. And, one thing that Kyle really respected about Chris Kasarik, who's really regarded as one of the top D-line coaches, is his style, and that's just cutting it loose. And we think that really lends to both Eric and Solomon and what they do and what they need to do to be successful. Like I said, we want to come at people in waves, and both those guys, I think, are very good players that we're very excited about for this season. In this kind of new style or little tweaked style that we're going to be implementing.
Joe Staley is only under contract through the end of this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, the offensive line has been pretty consistent throughout the last year and a half.
Right.
Do you still, since his future is uncertain, do you take a look more at some tackles for the draft?
I think you're always looking at the lines and trying to equip yourself for what's to come. But I'll say this about Joe Staley: Joe has a unique opportunity to be a part. We all know what he's meant to this organization. He's got a unique opportunity to be a part of this organization, and my hope is that he only plays for one organization. I think he's a special player. He's a special personality, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of where we're going on all that, but I'll just tell you that my hope, that Kyle's hope, that everybody associated that is involved in these decisions is that Joe never plays any place else but the San Francisco 49ers. We're very pleased with Joe Staley and the way he's playing.
I know you said you don't want to talk about contract stuff, but with DeForest, you've had discussions with his agent. Can you say how those discussions have gone? And he said it's very early in the process. I would assume you agree with that.
Yeah, it is extremely early in that process. I'd like to say the same thing about DeForest, but he's a little younger in his career. But I would love nothing more than for Defo to be here. We've got a long time to work on that. He's very important to us, and he's another guy that he's a big part of what we're doing, and just love everything about him and the way he goes about his business, this profession. I think he's a special player, and we'd like to keep him here for a long time.
Queen and Williams potentially also being a free technique, how much do you have to factor in maybe Buckner's, those talks with his agents?
Yeah.
And,
Well, if he ended up here, there's room for all of those guys. We really feel like that. The one thing we've tried to do is take some versatile players that can have the flexibility to play inside, outside, and I think that gives you flexibility in who you bring in. And philosophically, like I said, coming in waves, we like having strength in numbers and strength in the quality of those numbers.
You mentioned Lakin earlier. Where is he in his recovery from his knee?
He's doing really well. I look out my window and get reports, but Lakin's doing extremely well. It was unfortunate how the season ended up, but we felt like Lakin had played very well, and we're very high on just the. I think he makes us feel very secure at that left guard spot. Lakin's a really good player.
How are things staying with Robbie Gould?
Yeah, Robbie's not here for these voluntary workouts. I think there's a few things that make me feel really good. First of all, Robbie's extremely good at what he does, and I think the last couple of years have been indicative of that. Robbie's a guy who works extremely hard at his craft, and by virtue of that position, he can do that wherever he is, and he can do it in Santa Clara, he can do it in Chicago, he can do it wherever he is, and I'm sure Robbie's doing that. And Robbie's going to be a part of us, this coming year. I know that. We would like it to be longer than that, and we've made an attempt to make that happen. We haven't come to an agreement as of yet, and we'll see where that goes. But Robbie will be a part of us this coming year, and we're excited for that because he's very good at what he does, and he's also a big part of this team.
You saying that you would expect he would be here no later than training camp?
I can't speak as to when he's going to be here. I think, but when we kick it off, he'll be here.
There was, you guys showed some interest in Gostkowski.
Yeah.
What was the thinking there?
Well, the thinking was, we've got to do our due diligence in terms of being prepared for all scenarios. And, Steven was a free agent and also very good. Our number one priority in that respect was to try to figure out something with Robbie. Steven was there. I think our interest quickly got the Patriots to lock him down, and that's where he's at. So I'll leave that at that.
Are there any early returns with the new strength staff and the whole conditioning thing
Yeah.
here?
Early returns in that, I think as we looked at that and put a lot of time and research into it, you want to give your players, your organization every chance and put thought behind everything you do in the health and fitness area. And it was something we really worked hard to try to do by virtue of the work that we put into it, by the people that we interviewed. We learned a lot through the whole interview process, and by the people we ultimately chose for those roles. We're very pleased with what's going on. The proof will be in the pudding, what happens when we hit the field. I can tell you that there's been a very positive response from the players because I think they feel that these guys have their best interests, and they do a tremendous job of not just saying, hey, here's our workout for today. Here's what we're trying to accomplish with our workout. Here's what we're seeing in this phase. Here's what we're trying to prepare you for the next phase. So it's exactly what we wanted. How that works, we'll see. But we're very we're very proud of the work that they're doing. I think the players are very excited, and that speaks most to me, that excitement that they seem to have for what's going on.
How difficult is it to scout free safeties for this scheme, and how much does your experience playing safety in the NFL help?
Yeah, for this scheme in particular, I think there's they call it the eraser. A guy who's in the middle of the field who has a ton of range, who's a very good tackler, who can in essence pick up the trash when it gets past the first two waves, the D-line and the linebackers. And so you have to be very sound in those areas. I think we have a very good idea of what it looks like. And what was the second part of your question, Grant?
How does your experience playing the position
Yeah.
help you scout it now?
Yeah, I think it helps in many ways, but at other times, when you've gone through it, and I think I have a real high standard for the way that position should be played. So I'm always asking people, hey, make sure, here's what I'm thinking, but I want to know what you're thinking. But I do understand that position, and I think the safeties are somewhat interchangeable, and we have our own version of that cover 3 system. That's not all we do. We do play some split safety, so I think that versatility is a little important. But I do have a good understanding of what's asked of that position, and I feel good. I think sometimes better from what I hear of what everyone thinks about what we have there, and that's not to say that we might not add to that, but I feel pretty good about the guys we have there, and we got to get them back healthy and playing at a high level, because it's a really important position in our scheme.
Has the value of that changed at all, John, with the way these rules are, where safeties can't be the intimidating hitters like you and others were back in the day?
Yeah. Well, I'm not so sure that you can't be. You have to be very mindful as to how you are. I think of a guy like Cam Chancellor. I think early in his career probably struggled, was fined quite a bit because he played a very physical style of football. He doesn't play he played the strong safety, but Cam learned to lower his target and adjust to the rules and still played a very physical brand of football. So I think it can be done. You just have to be mindful as to how you do it, and that is a position that is I was going to say targeted, not a good word, often, because that's a lot of hits happen in space that everyone can see, and so that is something you have to be mindful of, though. I think if you were scouting John Lynch at Stanford right now, you might have a little worry about how it might translate. But I'd like to think that I would have adjusted my game to what was being asked of you.
With this being your third draft, can you talk a little bit about how your personal process has changed? And is there anything you wish you knew then that you know now? Not about specific players, but generally about the draft process.
Yeah, it's I think it's always fluid, and you're always learning. And there's things, there's things about, how much do I want to be out on the road? How much do I want to get out there that you have a better feel for? You have a better feel that things are good here. So maybe I have a little more opportunity to get away from here because I'm, very comfortable with our culture and who's in charge when I'm leaving and things of that nature. I think those things happen. I think relationships develop. I had a lot of relationships in the NFL. I think the relationships with the college coaches, those continue to flourish as you're talking to these people, and they learn to trust you, and you learn to trust them. I think all those things grow, and hopefully will continue to grow the longer I do this.
You mentioned the depth of this receiving class. Is there a
Mhm.
particular type of position that you might be looking for? I don't expect you to give me all the answers, but
Oh, wide receiver.
so you're looking for a wide receiver.
Yeah, well, perhaps.
You use a trade chart, I imagine, as a basis?
We do, yeah.
You might have had talks with number 2 overall, with another team perhaps. How much do you factor each specific case in, and is maybe this number 2 more valuable than, say, a chart would suggest?
Yeah, I think the chart's always it's something that is consistent throughout the league, so it's a basis for the starts of talks and those things. There's some teams, us included, who have their own version of the chart that we use internally, but I think it does give you consistency with another team to at least know the ballpark that you should be, but that always does change. And each situation, Tim, is unique like that. And so you have a basis. Hey, here's what the chart says. Now let's see if we can get a deal done.
You got what
Yeah.
when you moved one slot back 2 years ago,
Right.
something like that.
Yeah.
Do you think you could get more, less this year? I mean, that's one slot.
Yeah, I think one thing I've learned is quarterbacks tend to make people do things like that more so than other positions. And so, you know, if the quarterback that everybody wants is there, we'll see. Yeah.
What's realistic with 6 draft picks as it stands right now? What do you expect to accomplish from this draft? Do you expect to get multiple starters?
Yeah.
Multiple rotation? What's your goal?
You know, I think the encouraging thing each time we, you know, so this is the 3rd time in the draft, but free agency, you know, early on it was, gosh, we have a ton of needs. We got to fill this. We got to fill this. We got to fill this. This year in free agency, for instance, we felt like we needed an edge pass rusher. We were able to accomplish that with D Ford. We felt like we needed a presence in the middle of the field at the stack linebacker spot, and we were able to get Quan Alexander. So that certainly helps, allowing us to come into this. And that's not to say we're absent of need on this team. You know, we still have some things where we feel like we can improve, but every time we come into this, we feel a little better. So I think just adding good football players who fit into our culture and fit into what we want to be as an organization, I think that's the most important thing that we could come out of this draft with.
2 weeks ago, you said that there hadn't been much conversation about trading
Yeah.
your spot, but
Right.
as you've gotten closer to day one, has it naturally kind of ramped up?
Yeah, and it, you know, again, my experience, it typically happens this week. Sometimes, I mean, my first year, some things happen at the owners' meetings. You know, this week, you know, which is just this morning thus far, you know, a couple calls, but nothing of substance. And I'd imagine if there is interest, those things will heat up. But as of right now, you know, like I said, we'll listen. We also feel extremely comfortable that we could get some game-changing players there, and that's a good feeling.
You mentioned at the combine changing to line 9 under your new defensive line coach. With the new secondary coach, does the profile for what you might be looking at cornerback any different?
I think the profile's consistent. I think Joe and Daniel Bullocks, who are coaching the secondary now, Joe Woods and Daniel, will have their own imprint on what we do, but that profile's fairly consistent. We may have evolved as an organization with kind of some of the trends that are going on in the league with that profile, but it's fairly similar to what we've been operating under.
Couple more?
You mentioned feeling good about Solomon Thomas and their Armstead. I would assume you feel similarly to Various Moore and Akilah Witherspoon, but just given that Richard's not going to be here forever, are you taking a close look at corner in this draft and relative to how you feel about Moore and Witherspoon?
Yeah, it's another one of those positions, Chris, where you know, I think you have to consistently add those guys. That we're throwing the ball just at a rate this league. We're in nickel packages upwards of 70% of the time, and so you got to have those guys, and you got to have great depth at that position. So I think you're always focused on trying to find good players. We took a chance on Jason Verrett, who's had his share of injuries, because when healthy, Jason Verrett was a top-level corner. So we felt the risk-reward made sense in that instance. And so that's an example. When you have an opportunity to improve your team there, you take advantage of that.
How difficult would it be for a young guy to come in, and assuming Jimmy's healthy at free safety and Brett's healthy at cornerback, how difficult would it be for a young guy to come in and win a starting role ahead of those two guys?
Difficult, but not impossible. You know, I think there's a, you know, I'll leave that to Kyle, but there's a few spots here where we know pretty certainly, hey, this guy's got this spot on lockdown. Otherwise, we believe in competition, and competition, you know, making everyone better. And so, you know, I would never rule that out.
Is Jimmy Ward sticking at free safety?
Yeah, he'll be playing free safety, yeah.
Did Marquise Goodwin check in on his Olympic plans for next year with you guys? Has he reported yet for off-season workouts? Or is
No.
that-
I just hope he gets plenty of practice, you know, that end zone celebration he had with the long jump. Hopefully he's practicing a lot for those Olympics. And no, but, you know, people made me aware of that, and I have not talked to Marquise about that, though.
Is he here yet?
He's here, yeah.
John, you mentioned during your time social media or kind of what people are saying about this game? Right? How much you read Vail Cup, for example?
Well, I read Bob Lang showed me Matt Barrow's talking points here today, so hopefully I'm following him closely here. I got a sneak peek at, yeah. I always get a kick out of your headlines, Eric, and no, but I follow because it's a good way to. I follow because I'm not on it all the time. I could tell you earlier when I think I experienced the thing that everybody does with Twitter. It can be quite addicting, and then I had to ask myself, do you think Ozzie Newsom's running around scrolling Twitter? And the answer is probably no. So I'm probably much less on it, but I think at times it's really a good way to figure out kind of what's going on out there real time. And so I do look at it. I think more so now, I think I have people, when there's something important, tell me, because much like I'm talking to my teenagers, you can waste a lot of time on that thing. And so I'm trying to watch more film than I am scrolling Twitter these days. And that's been an evolution for me as with everybody.
Along those lines.
Yeah.
For weeks and weeks and weeks, Kyler Murray was definitely going #1.
Uh-huh.
Just over the past couple of days, now maybe not so.
Right.
So how do you kind of sort that out?
The one thing I know, we're not going to have to wait long, whatever that is, 15 minutes, and then we'll know whether it's them or someone else picking him or someone else. Do I want to know? Sure, just like you do, and just like everybody does, and that's why there's been so many different stories. And I think that's the hard thing with social media. People are talking about it all the time now, and I think where things in conjecture used to start much later in the process, it starts fairly early, and it's pretty brilliant what the league does, because people talk about this all the time, but it does, I'd be lying if I didn't say I didn't think about it, but I think what I know is that we're in really good position, and we're not, as I said, going to have to wait long, and what happens there at 1 will have effect on what we do at 2. We'll see.
I mean, if the Cardinals do pass on Kyler Murray, would you expect a lot of phone calls?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, would you take him? I would.
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you? I think, yeah. I think there seems to be a ton of interest, and I understand, man. We a couple times just threw him up in here, and it's electric stuff. It really is. It's, I've had some nightmares about not me, myself chasing him, but about us chasing him if it does fall that way. He's pretty special.
Deborah said that
Last one.
Ford was not here because he's an expectant father.
Yeah.
For,
Yeah.
did everybody else show up?
Yeah, we've had pretty good attendance. I think Mike Person, they had a baby last week, and I guess I should let Mike announce that, but sorry, Mike. And Robbie.
Okay,
Yeah.
so everybody else.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, guys.